Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, anti-Asian hate crimes have been at an all-time high. Organizations such as Hate is a Virus were founded to help educate and advocate for those in the AAPI community.
Starting with a campaign to support small businesses, local Chinatown businesses, Hate is a Virus has grown into a national organization that's advancing education, community advocacy, and also uniting different folks to educate the Asian American and Pacific Islander community to unite against bigotry, hatred, and xenophobia.
If you would like to help, Hate is a Virus has a community action fund where they're raising $1 million, which will go to grassroots organizations to help our community.
To donate, please go to www.hateisavirus.org. Thank you.
It doesn't stop at just the Asian American community. We're trying to make sure that anyone who listens will hear, the pain, because I feel like passion, pain, and trauma is universal.
We're not going to hide who we are for the sake of having a wider reach. If you can't love us at our face value, you don't deserve us at our pop rap. So, everyone knows this last year has been a really difficult one for the Asian American community. And, Alan and I have been friends for a long time, just as artists, we've collaborated. Especially those first few months of quarantine were so wild. We were just talking on the phone, checking in, saying like, yo, how you doing? And we're talking about how do we as artists not just have the conversation everyone's having, but actually what can we do to move forward that conversation? And something that we've both been really digging into recently has been Asian American history. Really realizing how there's such a long history, everything that's happening right now, whether it's street violence, whether it's, the government labeling Chinese people or Asian people as dangerous, this is all rooted in history. There's a long history of all of those sentiments. We started talking about this idea of like, yo, let's put out something not just addressing what's going on right now, but addressing where that comes from.
And I think it's important to do that because if people's only framework of what anti-Asian racism looks like is Trump and COVID, then it's easy for them to gaslight us. So the way to take that power back is to know your own history and know, your own traumas and struggles that your ancestors went through so that you see exactly where this pattern lies. History will teach you, and if we don't learn from history, then we're doomed to repeat it as we've seen. So I think this album is really important for, just us to get out because we wanted to get the messaging out that this is not like a new phenomenon. This is a thing that's been going on for years.
First things first, we know we're both straight Chinese men, and if we wanted to make something about Asian American history, it had to be for all of Asian America, not just ethnic monopolization or gender monopolization. So we were very intentional about seeking out South, Southeast, and East Asian artists, men and women, and having that equity on the album. So first and foremost, we knew we wanted a diverse roster. And then we also wanted to make sure it was people who know what they're talking about, right? If we're talking about Asian American history, because we've been so erased in schools, in media, in the public sphere, we wanted to make sure that everyone who's on there is just an incredible artist, but they're also very aware of community and history.
Jason first kind of told me about this project that they were putting together, and it was just on time with everything that's going on, just societally and in the world. Just I know how much work Jason and Alan both have been doing in the community with their art, and just contributed so much, so it was an honor for me to be a part of it.
First, I didn't think I could be on the project with them, but I kind of just went and did it anyway. I was like, I know this is a very important project to be on, and I was like, for me, it was very important to be on something like this that represents all of Asians, and so.
We put a lot of work and sweat and tears and hours into making sure that the people we got on the records were the right people.
Yeah, and some of the names that you guys might recognize is Ronnie Chang, Dante Bosco, AJ Raphael, And One, Ruby Ibarra, Chow Mein, B Vang. We got tons of people on here, and we're just so excited for people that haven't heard it to listen.
So the first track we performed today, Asian American History, is the first track on the album. And basically what it is it's just a mission statement. There's so many people who don't know the 170 years of Asian American history. And we just really wanted to create something to lead off the album that gets people into this mindset of discovering something that's for them that they may never have entertained before.
Yeah. Alan Z.
Jason Chu. Yeah!
Liberation from them on a militant tip. No exclusion I could ever make this immigrant dip. How you anti-Asian when it was a Chinese American that paved the way for birthright citizenship?
Wow.
Look how uncomfortable my heritage made them. The first sex symbol in America was Asian. Said so Hayakawa got the women hooked. Hollywood shook when he became their infatuation. You think COVID just a one-off fluke? Forget internment camps or nowhere to run off to. Traces of Japanese blood got you. In a cage, separated families over that one drop boot. Even still, the enlisted instead of throwing the coop. Singled up by their lieutenants like this, who you supposed to shoot? Fighting in the white man's war to kill our own, and they still call those Asian American soldiers kooks. Even when the US loses in Vietnam, they made films acting like they're the heroes, like they had won. They tell you about bombing civilians on Okinawa, but nothing on Malcolm X and Yuri Kochiyama. Intentional erasures while you heard of Cesar Chavez, but not the labor strikes that really started. Or when you say American and don't think of me, if they omit it, gotta tell our own history.
All we want is to be seen. Story of my life is a movie. Be a part of history
Forever.
like the ones that came before me. Unity is what we need.
That's right.
Passion of the elders live through me. Be a part of history. It's a real American story.
Jason Chu. Third world, I'm on a unity tip. Shouts that every single Asian isn't crazy or rich. How you think we white adjacent when they look at our kin? That's just a lack of colors in the box painting us in. Ay, cut the branch, but the root runs deep. I'm a product of the movement that preaches to lead. Bodies in the streets at the march. Unity is free, but it don't come cheap. No slack and no anti-blackness. Chinaman face but the bars, you know captions. Cash only, I do pay my taxes, but they don't go to fun little Tokyo youth centers. History of violence, they don't tell. We've been dying in the West, this is Oregon Trail. Question the history the textbooks tell. Pinos was in Cali for the Brits set sail.
Let's go.
They use the gifts that we bring, then they killed 30 Chinese miners at Rock Springs. Inherited trauma, we bear it with honor. The cuts in the skin make the bamboo sing.
All we want is to be seen.
Yeah.
Story of my life is a movie. Be a part of history
Forever.
like the ones that came before me. Unity is what we need.
That's right.
Passion of the elders live through me. Be a part of history
Forever.
It's a real American story.
Like, right, both of us are hip hop artists. Like, we grew up Asian American and we grew up in hip hop culture. And I feel like hip hop culture has this long history of being aware that artists are multifaceted, right? Like, somebody can make a party record and then like a lyrical rap record and then a socially conscious record, right? You get Lil Baby making the bigger picture, even though, you know, nobody looks at Lil Baby like he's the next Kendrick Lamar. But still, like, I think that one thing that hip hop does very well is it lets its artists be multifaceted, right? You look at a Tupac, and he could make a Hit 'Em Up, he could make a Changes, and he could make a Dear Mama, and he could make like all kinds of different music. But these artists are always fully themselves in every record. So this is a combo we've had a lot. Like, we're always gonna be Asian. You know what I'm saying? Like, any record we come to, like, we're not gonna hide our faces. We're not gonna be ashamed of who we are. We're not gonna try to hide who we are for the sake of having a wider reach. And so, you know, I'll make music that's like more fun. I'll make music that's more conscious. I'll make music that's more political. But I feel like if you can't love us at our face value, you don't deserve us at our, like, you know, pop rap.
Musically, we had, you know, everyone in mind, right? Regardless of nationality and orientation. But like, the messaging was definitely like for our community, because I feel like this is something that like is so special and near and dear to our hearts, that it's like, oh, if you're Asian, you listen to it, it's gonna resonate in a different way. But I have definitely heard people like my fans that aren't Asian that have like cried listening to like Model Minority or like other songs on the album, because they're like, oh, I never realized how much you guys went through. So I think with the intention in mind is like, it doesn't stop at just the Asian American community. You know, we're trying to make sure that anyone who listens will kind of hear, you know, the pain, because I feel like passion, pain, and like trauma is universal, right? So it'll hit as long as you give it a fair listen.
One phrase that's been going through my mind when we were writing this record and as we've been promoting it is that it's by us and it's from us, but it's for all. You know, like, and again, growing up listening to hip hop, like, you know, I'm not black, I'm not from New York, but, you know, listening to Jay-Z, listening to Nas, listening to Mos Def, like, I do think, I'll say this, I think that sometimes we overrate the value of representation. And this is what I mean by that. Like, we definitely need more diverse voices. We need more highlights on people that don't get seen. But at the same time, we can learn so much from people who aren't us, you know? And I think that one thing that I'm very proud of is, like Alan said, like, I've got fans who are not Asian, and they have been listening to this record and DMing me or whatever and saying, hey, we learned something, or like, yo, I could relate to this even though I'm not Asian. And I think that we gotta be so careful. Representation is important, but the problem is if we think that we can only learn from or empathize with people who look like and grew up like us, that's actually a real problem, because then how are we ever going to unite such a fractured world? And I think that that's something that we really want to do with this record. Is it doesn't matter where you're coming from. If you want to listen and you want to learn something about how this country was put together, this is a record for you. This is a record for all Americans, for all people.
Song Model Minority, it was the first single off Face Value, and it features Dante Bosco and Neela. The reason why for me it's so special is because when people want to gaslight Asian Americans, they're usually pulling from the model minority myth, right? And for us, it's important for us to dispel that, because it's been pretty much, you know, like causing our issues to be swept under the rug for so long. And it's like, it's time for us to finally dismantle that so that we can be seen as human and not as a faceless monolith.
Model. In our wallets, they thinking we got commas. Really in back pockets, we carrying deep traumas. Hang tied us by our own trousers. Seen as outsiders, they used to redline us. Time called us out white and the white scholars. Drove a divide between us and our black brothers. You got admitted to dominant white college. Still, you ain't valid for most of them white collars. Southeast Asian dark cousins. Drive down the streets, police radio buzzing. Gaslighted to thinking we made progress. Still, they killed Christian Hall, said nothing. Not a model, not a monolith. Ay, not a pawn for your politics. Yeah, I learned from Gandhi and Dr. King. If the system don't bring peace, we must abolish it. Ay.
If you only knew.
Yeah, and one.
Walk a mile in my shoes, yeah. If you only knew.
Yeah.
I'm so different from you when
I'm sick of people believing that we got privilege and we're passing as white, when that's a myth defabricated to combat civil rights. Pit us against the black and brown, it means to divide and dehumanize. Like,
see them chinks, they doing fine.
just to justify the various slurs. Model minority's not a portrait, it's an Asian caricature. To lump us together as parody work. Before you call us wealthy, let's talk about our income disparity first. To line claiming that we're white adjacent, the whiter races, Asian chongs and the eyes of Asians. Bamboo ceiling blocking high positions, higher wages. They hired us centuries ago for only migrant labor. My God, they hate us from the Chinese exclusion next to the Hart-Celler Act, where they let us in to be pawns as part of the trap. Silence of issues like
it's in the
we
past.
ain't got no political power or media coverage. Where's the privilege in that, huh?
if you only knew. Walk a mile in my shoes, yeah. If you only knew. We're not so different from you. We're not invisible people.
I guess for me, like, I love artists that carry their communities with them. You know what I'm saying? So I always look to like a Kendrick Lamar or a Frank Ocean. You know, people are just so steeped in their tradition. So I grew up as a Chinese kid in Delaware, like very, very, very like suburban upbringing. And to me, it was when I started listening to hip hop that I started hearing not just individual artists, but the communities that are around them. Those are the kinds of artists that really motivate me, because they're so grounded in where they come from, that when you hear them, it's not just like, oh yeah, that's this one person I'm learning about. It's like, yo, there's a whole world here.
For this record, Face Value, the two albums that I drew inspiration from is, the first one is Dead Prez, Let's Get Free. And the second is Royce da 5'9's album, The Allegory. And both albums are like super pro-black, and it touches on a lot of like their history and their heritage. And the music itself speaks for itself, so you don't have to be like black to get it. So, and I wanted that type of energy for our album, where like you don't have to be Asian to understand where this is coming from. My favorite rapper is Eminem. So like growing up, as a kid, I was bullied and outcasted because I look different from everyone else. Eminem's backstory as someone who was bullied and not like welcomed into Black culture resonated with me, and the fact that he broke through racial barriers based on just his tenacity and skill, it spoke to me basically to say like, oh, this may be possible for me because I look different from everyone else, but I wanted to do something that isn't traditional to Asian people. And so I think it's like two things, right? There's the individual story that I've learned from Eminem, and then there's like great like artists who champion their community. And I think having both perspectives of the personal and universal, that's what molds me as an artist, where I can speak to you about my deepest traumas and feelings, but I can also relate to you as a fellow human about common issues that we have together.
This is what we talk about even when we're not making music. So since we just live that and breathe that, it came out very naturally in the writing process.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest challenge wasn't even like actual tangible things. It was more so like the task itself of like making a good album, a concept album about Asian American history. Because like if you just say it out loud, it's like is this like a history lesson?
We don't want this to be like a TED Talk with a beat behind it. We want this to be good music that people can just put on when they're working out, when they're driving, when they're hanging out with their partner or whoever. Like just good music that you can vibe to, and then you realize like, oh, they really talking.
Yeah, like the way I always describe like the music that I want to create, or whenever I have something to say, it's kind of like putting medicine in the candy, because it's like you want like people to hear it and be like, oh, this is really dope. But then if they happen to catch something worth of educational value or just awareness, then great, right? But like it's not gonna impede them from wanting to listen.
The song Family Style that we have with And1 is really special to us because I think a lot of people know, right? Asian food is very popular. But what people overlook is all the different ways that food nourishes our community, right? It's heritage, it's culture, it's family, but it's also literally economically feeding so many families, so many communities that are Asian American. My uncle, my aunt, they've run restaurants their whole life. And so not only is Asian American food something that shares our culture, but it's something that has literally allowed our families to survive since chop suey restaurants, since sushi restaurants, since, all these different ways. It's been something that's uplifted our community and let us literally feed our families in this country.
I think our food is something that has been very polarizing living in America. I remember an incident where I went to school in first grade and my grandma made me dumplings, and the first grade teacher told me like, what did you eat for breakfast? And I said dumplings, and she said, your breath smells, don't ever eat those again, tell your grandmother to never prepare those for you. And just the trauma of that, and it affected me for a long time. And so just to be able to openly talk about our food, and we also show our love and our affection with food. So just to be able to write about that and about my grandmother and her stories and what she meant, but when she cooked a plate of food, it was more than just feeding someone, So just to be able to talk about that was so healing for me.
DJ Housecat, let's go.
La 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 la.
Have you eaten yet is what my grandma says to me. Chubby cause she feed me snacks, swear my name is Scooby. Up there in the kitchen every late night, noodles at the banquet for the long life. That's why we got this love that won't die. Love to every strip mall store called Pad Thai. Every hood Chinese takeaway, Indian buffet. You let our parents provide, this food is heavenly. Shouts to every dim sum girl, you are my favorite. Shouts to every line cause working doubles on the daily. Food is love, that's what grandma taught me, I ain't hating. But if you ain't about the culture, don't try to elevate it. If you ain't about the culture, don't try to elevate it, no. If you ain't about the culture, please don't try to elevate it.
Just a taste of you brings me back home.
Yeah.
Just a taste of you brings me back home.
Yeah. We showing love in different ways. Cooking is a form of reciprocity. Family style, brother nature, that means everybody eats. I'm like Eddie Wong on beats, boogie down, steady cooking something fresh like how about me. Ain't no Betty Crocker feast. This is culinary culture, not just commerce to us. Korean barbecue with double dim, some ramen and pho. Back then we had to cook with scraps, that's what chop suey was. Now we got lines to get inside our restaurants like a club. Authentic Asian food in the scene is few in between. Middle fingers to your local leash, fusion cuisine. They try and demonize what we eat, reduce it to memes like they'll eat anything.
They ain't even human, it seems.
Media pain as a savage is public eating it up. How you gon' talk about our spices you ain't seasoned enough? Like we ain't whitewashing your dishes,
We're just cleaning them up.
The vultures are loud, get out if you're peeking and duck.
Just a taste of you brings me back home. Just a taste of you brings me back home. Harmony, grandma, what I wouldn't give just to taste your food right now. Cooking with you, hearing beautiful stories. Your food and pay become your crown and glory. Just a taste brings me back home. Just a taste brings me back home.
Thank you for feeding us. We just hope that this music can give you a little bit of nourishment as you go about your journey through this life.
You know, something that I think is super important, whether you're Asian American or not, like, it is better to be who you are and to attract people to who you really are than to try to contort yourself to fit a space that people will let you stay in. We've had this conversation so many times, like, we'd rather be ourselves and have a smaller fan base that actually loves who we are than like, oh, yo, if you brand this way and if you make this kind of record, you can go viral. And the next thing you know, all you're doing is chasing what people want of you rather than attracting people to who you actually are. Whatever identities you have, gender, sexual orientation, geography, race, like if you can know and love yourself, then the people who will be attracted to that will be the right people. May not be the most people always, but it'll be the people that need to be with you.
With me, right, like if you love me, but you don't care for my people and you don't care about our pain, I don't want you. And it's like, that's not like an easy thing to say because, you know, some people, you know, you want it all. And I think, but that for me was what kind of molded my mentality for this album because I'm like, I understand some people may just want to hear me sing like love songs or whatever. And I'll get back to that. But I feel like with this, it was so important to kind of like stop the commercial stuff and get into the nitty gritty and like really talk about some stuff, right? I think it's important to like know where you stand. Like when you take a stand, I feel like people can feel that passion. And ironically, you know, I think we ended up having more people in support than ever because I think it's so important right now for people to hear this kind of messaging, right? Because in this world where there's so much trauma, we see it every day without any kind of like indication of stopping. We just want to, you know, we want to heal and find restoration. So we're hoping that Face Value brings that.
Yeah, I'd say two things to young artists who are like trying to speak up. First and foremost, know yourself, right? Because I think there's a lot of artists that I see coming out trying to stand for something when they don't even know who they are. And then it comes off as pandering, it comes off as clout chasing. We can often come out, and if you're branded as a social justice artist, then you just come out and you're just making topical music. Choose the battles that you're fighting, but then let people know you're a human being beyond that. We can't be fighting every day.
You gotta eat cereal too, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta take a break. And I also feel like don't let the world mold you into and corner you into a box. I always say I don't consider myself an activist. I'm just an artist and an entertainer with a passion for, you know, righteousness, right? And so I think like when people, like younger people say, oh, I wanna make music for this arena, but what if one day you want to make music for something else, but if people already see you like this, you're stuck, right? So like what Jason was saying was like, you want to be well-rounded so that people respect you enough to listen to you when you're talking about this topic, or when you're talking about yourself, or when you're talking about something happy, right? So I think it's important to not corner yourself into a box.
Because I grew up in like a predominantly white area, for me, I remember looking in the mirror one day and I was just like, oh man, I wish I had like blonde hair and blue eyes like these popular like, you know, white girls, and I realized it was because I wasn't comfortable with who I was, and I didn't even know like what it truly meant to be Asian. So I've really been able to grasp who I am as an adult, and even as my in my artistry today, I'm so proud to be Mien, and so I love to just spread awareness to it, because a lot of people don't know what Mien people are, and I still have to tell them to this day. And so yeah, that line to me, I'm just like, man, I'm so proud to be Asian. I'm like always saying that, like, I love being Asian, you know? So for sure, I totally resonated with the song.
The song Sandra is actually the final track of our album, Face Value. And it's, you know, pulls from the quote from Sandra Oh, it's an honor just to be Asian. And we wanted the album to end on this celebratory note because we don't want to just explore oppression and trauma. We want to be able to, you know, celebrate the contributions, the accolades, and just how great it is to be a part of this community. And, you know, I think this song, it sums up everything, you know, from the bad to the good.
Yeah. Character media, one time, let's go. From gold skin to cinnamon green cards and citizens, airlifts, university scholarships, immigrants, dark hair and irises, young without college and whatever we playing at. You know we be killing it, humble but dominant. Grew up in acrobat flip from laundromat to graduate to diplomat. Ayy, called Chinaman by the ignorant, the wise they call them gentlemen. Y'all know what time it is. I love my people, how we haggle at the markets. Take a family vacation to the outlets. Eating out is not a question if we gonna split, if anyone takes the last portion. No, I love the smell of salt and sweet gold in the air like the sun off the beach. I love the stories that make us so unique. You can copy the food, but the soul is out of reach. It's an honor.
An honor just to be Asian, not your model.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Bruce Lee and Sun Tzu, it's an honor to be like, always treated as foreigners, never honorary white. Not the model minority, I'm the model for the plight. Poster boy for change, they're really on the way I strike. From the cloth that says Ohio Kawa anime won. The kids are playing BTS and putting anime on. Wouldn't show Jet and Aaliyah kissing film before, but now Andrew banging Molly, no need to feel insecure. Never found the gold mountain, but we made the gold open. Superstars on camera, Hollywood is Robo Gold. Probing word to Eddie Wong, let the stories be televised. Asian pride to Asian raps to Asians never die. This is Asian America, not to be fetishized. From the crazy rich to crazy 88, we steady rise in the industry that shun us cause of preconceived biases. We'll win because we're Asian American, not in spite of it.
What an honor just to be Asian, not your model minority.
Serena Yang.
I've been thinking about the times that I didn't speak, the times that I held back, but I know that it's my time and I can't be weak. I'm moving from my past. What an honor just to be Asian.
It's an honor.
Not your model.
It's an honor just to be Asian. Ay.
What an honor.
It's an honor just to be Asian.
Not your model.
It's an honor just to be Asian. Ay.
Word to Sandra Oh. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of your community, cause it's an honor.
For 170 years, Asian America's been built by blood, sweat, and tears. And we're still here, we've been here, and we're gonna keep building in the midst of a world that doesn't want us here. We're gonna stay united, we're gonna stay strong, we're gonna stay in solidarity with others, because that's what we do.
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. You can follow me everywhere at Jason Chu Music, Jason CHU Music.
Yeah, you can find me at Alan Z Music, ALANZ Music, and you can find our album Face Value on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Tidal, and wherever you stream music.
Yeah, please take a listen to some of the music, make it the soundtrack for your life. We appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in.